Today, we're going to be covering advanced analytics. As a little bit of background, we'll talk about OneSignal, how you can figure out what outcomes you want to drive and track, and then how to actually do that at a technical level. My name's Zach. I run product here at OneSignal. And one of the great things that I get to do is go and talk to our customers and figure out what's really useful and valuable to folks. And one of the gaps we realized is a lot of folks know that sending push notifications is important because they know that's a good way to bring users back to their app or back to their website. But they have a hard time measuring and connecting all of that up with their own analytics systems. So if you use Google Analytics, we do have a built-in integration. But if you actually want to ask more sophisticated questions, like how many users are directly clicking on the notification, or how many people did I send a notification to and didn't directly click on it, but did use my app in close time proximity to that. So I could still think of as being influenced by my notification campaign or by my marketing campaign. So we're going to cover that today. We'll cover how you can go even beyond that with custom outcomes, which let you track anything that you might want in your app or website. And then we'll open it up for a bit of Q&A. So you should all be able to see my screen and the slides I'm going through, and then I'll jump into a live demo in just a second. Cool. So 30 seconds about OneSignal. We actually started out as app developers wanting to find a better way to send push notifications. And I used to work at Facebook and LinkedIn for a number of years, and one of the biggest drivers for getting users back on a daily basis was push notifications, right? To alert users that there was content that was relevant for them, that was timely, that they might want to check out. And so the same experience was true with the early days of OneSignal, where we realized that actually to build apps and get people to use them, you really need to find good ways to keep folks engaged and let them know about timely and relevant information. In fact, at big tech companies, there's teams of dozens of folks just working on optimizing notifications. And so we're trying to take that and make that power and that kind of optimization available to everybody. Cool. So let's take a quick view across kind of OneSignal's advanced analytics capabilities, going from sort of simplest on the left to sort of more sophisticated on the right. So when you send a notification, you can obviously go in our dashboard under the delivery tab and just see all the statistics there. You also can pull that data down using our view notifications API. And that effectively allows you to get all the data that you would want to know at a macro level. How many folks got this notification? How long did it take to send? What was the click-through rate on that notification, and so on. So that's where sort of most folks start, by just kind of looking at click-through rates in the dashboard or via the API if they want to do it that way. The next level of sophistication is to actually say, well, I want to be able to know who of my users clicked on a specific notification, who is taking a particular action. And the value of that is it lets you actually start updating your data model and your backend systems to build a richer profile of who is interested in what content or responsive to what types of campaigns. And so you can do that with the notification history API. Now, the notification history API is only available on our paid plans, as are outcomes, because to store all this data and maintain it takes us a bit more storage and bandwidth than we can provide kind of for the basic offering over here. So notification history API gives you user level who clicked on and who received a message. That's only retained for 7 days because it's a lot of data, and typically folks accessing it via the API would maybe pull it down once a day. And then outcomes, which is what I'm going to talk about today. And the great thing about outcomes is they let you go from who clicked on my notification or how many clicks did I get to actually instrument anything that you want on your website or your app. And that can be, who added to an item to their cart if you're an e-commerce site, who shared a piece of content if you're in social media, who replied back to this message, And so that actually takes you from looking at, notifications as just driving clicks or opens of your app or website to actually say, what are the outcomes I care about? Because you could imagine there could be a situation where you have a lower click-through rate, but the messaging, the way you've tailored your messaging, is really good at incenting people to take action. Let's say it was a discount or something like that. Or very specific to a particular style that might not be right for everybody, but for the people who click on it and are interested, is going to really resonate with them, and they're going to be more likely to purchase. So we'll look at that in just a sec. And the other really interesting thing about outcomes is that they can be measured in 3 ways using OneSignal. You can say how many people directly clicked on something, or how many people took an action, open their app, purchase something within a time window or attribution window of when I sent them a notification. Or how many folks were not in either of those 2 buckets and just took an action beyond what my attribution window was. I see we've got a quick question. Yes, a recording of this will be made later available on YouTube, and we'll post that to the OneSignal YouTube page. Thanks for the question. So the really big thing to think about here is that someone just clicking on your notification is not actually what you're typically trying to drive as a business. You're trying to drive an action. If you're a social media company, you're probably trying to drive time on your site, or number of posts that someone views, or number of posts that they create. If you're a video site, you care about how many videos they watch or how much time they spend watching video. And if you're an e-commerce site, you probably care about, items added to cart or dollar value of things purchased. So outcomes are really easy to visualize and export, as you'll see in just a sec. And they're going to be available on iOS and web in the next 2 weeks, and they're already available today on Android. So these are examples of elements of the conversion funnel that you might want to track as people come to your site or open your app and drive a result that you care about. So let's dive into the dashboard so we can actually see how all this works. I'm going to go and create a message, and it's just going to be, let's say I'm taking an e-commerce example. So Thanksgiving sale starting now. Best deals of the year. They won't last long. Great. And if I wanted, I could make this a little bit prettier. I could throw in, let's say, a quick image. Cool. And I've used OneSignal's embedded image search functionality here just to make this look a little nicer. Great. And then I maybe want to send folks to my website. I could also have this be a deep link if I wanted, but for the sake of simplicity, I'll just leave it on my website. Great. So now I'm going to send this message. And I'm going to, I see that it shows up here as a web push for me. I also see here that it shows up. I'll show you I see that it shows up on my phone. And so I've now got this notification, and I could look at click-through rates and all that, but I actually want to drive something more interesting. I want to drive an outcome that I care about. So I'm going to click on this notification, and then I'm going to drive an outcome of, let's say, add to cart. So outcome name is going to be add to cart. And I'm going to, let's say, add 3 items to my cart. And now when I go and add that item here, I see that there's 3 items that are added to my cart. And since I actually had my click destination as my website and not my app, but the items that I added to my cart were in the app, I see that those items added to my cart, those 3 items, are influenced, not direct. Because the way we count direct is if someone directly clicks on the notification and then triggers that outcome within that session. In this case, I sent someone to my website, and then they later came to my app and triggered these add to cart actions. So we call them influenced. So a quick way of kind of visualizing this is if a user clicks on a notification and fires an outcome within that session, that is direct. If a user doesn't click on the notification and have the outcome within that session, but does have it within an attribution window, we call that influenced. And then if they fire an outcome in your app or on your website beyond the attribution window, we say that's unattributed. And you'll be able to see all this stuff kind of in the dashboard. So there's 3 outcomes that we provide out of the gate where you don't have to write any code. Number of clicks on a notification, straightforward enough. Number of sessions, so the number of times that folks open your app. And usually sessions and clicks will be pretty close, but it's possible that you send someone to your website instead of to your app, in which case you have a click to your website, but there wasn't actually a session that was created in your app. And then finally, session duration, which is how long someone has spent in your app once they clicked on that notification. So that's sort of what we build in by default. And I'll give an example here of session duration by sending but by looking at this notification I sent and seeing that there's 37 seconds of time that I had the app open for because of that notification and close time proximity to that notification. And this will sum across all folks who get this specific notification. I can also cut this here by direct and influenced, as well as by different platforms and different time ranges. So that gives you kind of a quick example. I'm going to do something now that's a little bit more interesting, which is actually use this to track the dollar value of purchases. So I'm going to go through, create a new message here. And I'm going to say, find out who won today's football game, a soccer game. Let's go back to a commerce example. Okay, so 20% off the best deals of the season. Okay, so I'm sending this notification. Again, if I want, I can make it look pretty by throwing in a quick image from web search. Cool, that looks nice. And I'm going to send it. And so now I'm going to actually fire an outcome on my phone of 3 different types. So I'm going to show you what I'm doing kind of on my phone. I'm going to fire an outcome, which is purchase amount. And so here you can see purchase amount, and I'm going to put, let's say 5 for like $5. And I'm going to fire that outcome with a value. So there's 3 types of outcomes. There's just regular outcomes, which is a name. There's outcomes with values, which is a name and a value. So like purchased amount, and 5 would be an outcome with a value. And then there's unique outcomes. And unique outcomes are outcomes where even if I fire that outcome 10 times in a session, we're only going to count it once. So that's useful for saying, like, did a user upgrade, yes or no, rather than did they hit the upgrade button 5 times. Also useful for, did someone invite their friends to the app? Whether they invited 1 friend or 15 friends, I might only want to count that once. So I've now got this outcome with a value, and I fire it with a value of 5. And I'm going to fire it also with a value of 10. And I'm also going to create a unique value which says invite friends. Invite friends. And for invite friends, I'm going to do that as a unique outcome. So I'm going to send that outcome a lot of times. And you're actually going to see it's only going to show up once because of this uniqueness property. So now let me go back, and I'm going to add one other outcome, which is like browse product. Browse product. Cool. And I'm going to fire that one a couple times. Great. So now I go and I click into this notification that I just sent. Browse product and purchased amount. Purchase amount. Let me just double check. There we go. So purchase amount, what I'm going to do here is go and get the sum. And the cool thing here is I sent two purchase amount events, one for $5 and one for one for $5 and one for $10. And I can view the sum here, and it will sum together those values. So I could see the dollar value of all purchases. Let me share my screen again. So purchase amount here, I can see the sum of these multiple purchase amounts that I sent down. One was for $5 and one was for $10. And I'm able to see that sort of sum here very easily. And I can also see this on the graph where I see, okay, in this 1 minute time frame, there were 3 products that were browsed. Browse count is 3. And there were $15 of products that were purchased. Now, I can also see for purchase amount, the number of events of that type. So recall there were 2 purchased amounts, one for $5 and one for $10. And so if I go to count, I'll actually see here that there were 2 purchase events, and that their sum was $15. I'll also see for that invite friends that even though I fired that event like 5, 10 times, it only shows up once here. And you'll see all these are showing up in the influence column because I didn't click the notification. Instead, I ignored the notification, but went into my app right after I'd gotten it. So we call it influenced because I opened the app and I triggered these outcomes within close time proximity to when I received that. I could also then click on the notification directly, which I'm going to do right now. And let's say trigger some purchases. So send outcome with value. And so I'm going to trigger $20 of purchases. So refresh this. Purchase amount. And you'll see here that in purchase amount, I now have this count of 2 because I fired one of $10 and another one of $10. And I'm able to see this breakdown of direct and influenced, like we just talked about, as well as a total across. And we'll see that since I only actually directly clicked on it once, I only see one click here. Cool. So this is letting you take any event that you want to instrument in your app or website and add it and visually and easily be able to see it in the OneSignal dashboard. You can also export these events, and it will email you that export. So if you want to do analysis in Excel or Google Sheets or something like that, really easy to get this data and be able to slice and dice it in a bunch of different ways. So we've sort of gone through outcomes very briefly and how they're useful. A couple other things I'll chat through, and then I'll open it up for any questions. So there's these 3 outcomes that we provide without you having to write any code. You just make sure you're on the latest version of our SDK. And then there's these custom outcomes. And you'll notice when I used purchase amount or invite friends, those were custom outcomes. And to add them to your app or website, it's just a line of code, JavaScript on web, and a line on Android or iOS. That's included in the documentation. So if you just go to OneSignal documentation and type outcomes, you'll see that we describe these 3 types of outcomes. Regular outcomes, where you just send an event. Outcomes with a value, like purchased amount and the dollar amount of the purchase. And unique outcomes, where even if you send that outcome a lot of times, we'll automatically deduplicate it for that user on that notification. And so that is useful when you're saying, hey, I want to know if someone posted content during the session, rather than how many pieces of content did they post. And there's a lot of cases where you might actually want both, right? So if you're thinking about building better analytics for your app, you might want to know how many pieces of content someone posts, and you may also want to know how many unique sessions contain someone posting content. And so send outcome you would use to track how many times content was posted, and send unique outcome you would use to track how many unique people or sessions were generating content. And any outcome that has a value can be aggregated with either a count or with a sum. And so the count of sessions is how many sessions existed. The sum of session duration will give me all the seconds spent from folks having clicked that notification if it was direct, or in close time proximity to it if it was influenced. Couple quick notes. So outcomes are a new feature we've shipped, which means you need to be on the latest version of the OneSignal SDK. Clicks are backwards compatible and are reported even on really old versions of the SDK, because we want to make sure that you get accurate click-through rate reporting and statistics. But if you actually want to like add these new outcomes or get things like session duration, that requires updating to the latest version of the SDK. Looking forward a little bit, we're building iOS and Web SDK support right now. We expect that to be ready in the next couple of weeks. And then being able to export outcomes via the API, not just via the dashboard, is also a thing that we're working on, along with user level outcomes. So knowing which user triggered which outcome. And finally, being able to fire outcomes from in-app messages. So an interesting use case here would be if I want to get a net promoter score for my app, I might actually want to send folks a in-app message that says, how would you rate us, 1 to 10? And I'll be able to see in outcomes how many folks voted me a 1, how many folks voted me a 2, how many folks voted me a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and so on. And so that's going to allow you to do sort of quick surveys, quick polls, without having to actually write code. We'll build that in as something that you can do from the in-app messaging UI in the product. So hopefully that gives you kind of a brief idea of what outcomes are capable of doing, how they can help you understand drop off at each step of your conversion flow and your app or site, and can help you make better decisions. If you know that a lot of folks are, let's say, adding to cart but not purchasing, right? Maybe you want to redo part of your UI to help folks, once they've added something to cart, be aware of that. Or maybe even better, you want to use OneSignal to trigger abandoned cart reminders for those folks to come back and check out and complete their purchase.